Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1684A, and today's date is October 8th, 2018, and the title of the episode is The Fed is Killing the Economy, Depression Warning Spreading Around the World. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we've been talking about how Trump, the Fed, they're working together to bring this economic system down. And the reason why they're bringing it down is because they need to crash it so they can reset it. They need the central banking system completely demolished. And we can see that the central banks, the central bank of all central banks, they're very worried. They are giving warnings. They've been telling us that what the Fed is doing, Trump's policies, they're not going to work. It's going to crash the economy. And in the past, we've never seen anything like this before. Normally, the central banks, they stay very quiet. They might give a little blurb here and there, but they don't come out with major warnings telling you that the economy is going to enter a depression, that we're going to see a lot of trouble ahead of us. And if we really think about this, why in the world would the central banks come out and tell us the economy is going to crash? Think about this for a second. During Obama, we were in this recovery. The economy wasn't really doing that well. GDP numbers were barely hitting 2%. And they're telling us what a great recovery this is. Everything is fantastic. Everything the Fed is doing is incredible. Now, we have the economy where the GDP numbers are 4%, unemployment at the lowest point since 1969, and they're out there reporting that the economy is going to crash. I mean, does this make sense? No, yes, I know these numbers are all manipulated, but if you really look at what's going on here, during the recovery phase, they didn't say a word about we're heading into a crash, that the system's going to break down. Only when Trump came in did they start pushing this warning. And they're pushing the warning while the economy, these statistical numbers, are doing better than we've ever seen before. Something doesn't make sense here. You think they already knew that the economy was never ever strong? Do you think they already knew that the economy was going to break down and they don't have an event right now? They already knew all of this. They knew what was going to happen. And they're out there projecting what's going to happen. And they're trying to figure out a way to blame this on someone else besides the central banks. So this way, they can continue with their system. And what I mean by continuing with their system, what they want to do is they want to reset the system and start their system all over again. I'm not talking about the people system. I'm talking about the central bank system. They want their system still in place, but they need to restart it. They brought their system to the very end. This is the furthest it can go. This is why they need an event like war or something like this to cover it up. They don't have it right now. And they know eventually what's going to happen is the entire system is going to break down. Remember, the United States right now is paying over $500 billion worth of interest on the debt. The worldwide debt is ridiculous. It cannot be sustained. And their system is only designed to last up to a certain point, and then it crashes. Especially when you remove the petrodollar system. And of course, Trump already gave that warning to the Saudis, letting them know that soon they're going to have to pay for the United States to protect them. Doesn't matter if they want it or not. What he's really saying is that we're no longer going to do this because we're no longer going to have the petrodollar system. Now, Ron Paul is out there, and he's saying that the stock market, it's going to decline by 50%, and there's no way to stop it. And he's right, because we know that the stock market is one gigantic manipulation. The housing market's going to fall, most likely by half. It was pumped up into this gigantic bubble. It's an illusion. All of this is an illusion. And this debt cannot be sustained. This is how the central bank system is designed. It's only designed to last to a certain period, and then it collapses. John Williams, who was on Greg Hunter, said the Fed is killing off the economy. Yes, this is part of the plan. The plan is to bring the system to its knees and blame it on the central bank. And this is exactly what is happening. John went on to say, the Fed is trying to raise rates. The idea is if you get higher rates, the banks will be able to make more profits on their lending. It will also encourage bank lending. Unfortunately, on the consumer end, it raises the consumer's cost of borrowing as interest rates go up. It makes mortgages more expensive. It makes borrowing more expensive. Mortgages go up, people don't buy as many houses. What you are seeing right now is effectively a recession in the housing market. In the construction area, existing home sales have been down for 6 or 7 months in a row, and it's down year over year. And he's saying that the entire system is going to implode. Yes, this is exactly what they are doing. It's part of the plan. And this is why we have the biz, this is why we have the IMF all out there giving warnings like they've never done before. And if you read some of these warnings, you can see they're very, very nervous. Let's take a look at the IMF warning. Financial crash warning. World economy vulnerable to second Great Depression. I mean, and of course, they're putting this out there while the economy is doing better than it's ever done before. Yes, I know this is a fake economy, but on the surface, where everyone is believing this, they're trying to convince us that a crash is coming. And the reason they're doing this is because they want to blame this on Trump somehow, some way. But it's very difficult to do. Coming out of Reuters, markets should brace for a lengthy convalescence, Biz warns. And let me read a little bit from the article. Financial markets need to gird for a lengthy spell of turbulence as more of the world's top central banks begin shutting down stimulus programs and raising interest rates. Yes, what we see happening right now, and of course, there's not many central banks that are shutting down their stimulus and raising the rates. The ECB is not doing this. It's the Fed. The Fed is unwinding. The Fed is raising the rates. And the biz is warning that this is going to be a problem. And they're very nervous about this because they don't have any control over it. And you can see just with everything else, the warnings keep coming because they know what's going to happen. We're finally at that point where the system is going to break down and collapse. Yes, it's getting a little help from Trump and Powell, where they're raising rates and they're not going to stop. They're going to keep pushing it until the system cracks and breaks and falls apart and implodes on itself because they need to destroy this central bank system. And once it's destroyed and all fingers are pointing to the central bank system, people can say, we don't want this again. And of course, this opens up the Fed for an audit. It opens up the American people to what the Fed has been really doing, where all the funds have been going, how much they ripped off the American people, and why we should never, ever have a private central bank create currency, manage the economy when they're not a part of the people. Remember, the Fed is a separate corporation. They don't report to the people. They have nothing to do with the people of the U.S. The central banks around the world have nothing to do with the people. They are a separate entity, non-elected leaders. And here we are approaching that period of time when we're going to be going through this transition. The whole point of what Trump is doing right now is to prepare the United States for this transition. We need to have manufacturing back. He needs to undo everything the central bank, the globalists, the deep state have been doing over the many, many years. They stripped the United States of almost everything because they were preparing to have a one world government and to bring the United States down to a third world level. That was their plan. Now Trump with the short period of time he has, he needs to reverse all of this and do it very, very quickly. Will it be quick enough? We don't know. But you could see he's working very, very fast at trying to do this. And this all has to be done so the U.S. can move forward, because we're going to be on a completely different system. And if we don't have manufacturing, we're going to be stuck. Remember, before, countries had to hold U.S. dollars all around the world in their reserves. And they would take those dollars and they would trade them in for our manufactured goods. Well, countries will not have to hold the U.S. dollars anymore, because we will no longer be the reserve currency. So they can go any other place to get the manufactured goods. And if we don't have manufacturing here, we can't export. And the U.S. implodes on itself. Remember, the deep state, the central bank, the globalists, they've been planning this for a very long time. They've been moving everything out of the U.S. very, very slowly, so people really wouldn't notice. Yes, you heard it here and there on the news that the middle class will disappear, we're losing our manufacturing, but it was so slow that people didn't really understand what was going on. And we're at that point where people are starting to look around saying, okay, we have ghost towns now, Detroit, Buffalo, where we used to have huge manufacturing. Yes, there's still a little bit of manufacturing around the country, but the major producers, they're no longer here. And the deep state and the globalists, they made it so tough with regulations, and they made sure with these regulations that these companies would never, ever come back. That was the whole point of regulations. It was to drive all of these corporations out of the U.S., implement more regulations to stop companies from coming back. Make sure they didn't have any tax incentives. Make sure they couldn't meet any of these regulations, and make it too hard to do any type of business in the U.S. That was their whole plan. Now all of it has to be reversed, and that's what we're seeing right now. But we're going to be going through this transition. We have to go through a transition, and it's going to be bumpy for many, many people. It's going to be difficult for many people. I mean, think about when we came off the gold standard back in the 70s onto the petrodollar. I mean, we had gas lines, unemployment was very high. Yes, interest rates moved up because they were producing a lot of dollars at that time because we came off a gold standard. But for many people, it was very, very difficult. And then things started to even out. This time, we have a huge amount of debt. We're not on the gold system, and we're going to be moving to a completely different system. And this is going to be difficult for many, many people. This country is going to go through this major transition, and it's going to hurt a lot of people. And this is why you need to be ready and prepared. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.